Right now, from North Carolina to Florida, the southern east coast is monitoring the calving season of the North Atlantic right whales. The Marine Resources Council is one of the organizations helping with that effort. Today, Julie Albert, the North Atlantic Right Whale Conservation Program Coordinator, and Joel Cohen, a volunteer and wildlife photographer for the MRC, have joined me to talk about these whales. Now, we've all heard of humpback whales and killer whales, but what is a North Atlantic right whale and what does it look like?
They look like submarines. I've had people ask me that. Do we have submarines off our coast? I'm like, no, it's probably a whale. They're mostly all black. They don't have a dorsal fin. Their tails are black. Their pectoral flippers are black. They've got these white, lumpy, bumpy callosities on their heads that are what we use to identify the individuals. If you get the chance to see a head sticking out of the water, they've got a very highly arched jawline, which sets them apart from a lot of whales, and a V-shaped blow when they come to the surface and exhale.
Their name, the right whale, they were named that because they were the right whale to hunt.
Right whales were hunted longer than any other whale species. They were brought closer to extinction than any other whale species, and they were taken for their blubber and their baleen that they have in their mouth instead of teeth. And by the time they gained international protection in 1935, we think there were fewer than 100 of them left. It's been more than 80 years of protection from international whaling, and there's still only at 336 individuals in the population.
Of those 336 whales, there are fewer than 70 reproductive females remaining.
We've lost 50 individuals in total since 2017, not including 2021 because that data is not out yet.
The population estimate comes out every fall, and ever since 2010, it has been in decline every single year.
The North Atlantic right whale is the fourth largest whale in the world. It is headed for extinction because of accidental human interactions.
Another reason that it's important to call in sightings is because researchers aren't able to tag these whales.
The aerial surveys that fly are restricted to certain times of the year and certain places based on the funding that they have to survey those areas. So, like right now, we're in the critical habitat area that's federally protected, but about 75 miles of coastline is not monitored by the surveys. So we rely on citizens to call in sightings because if we can put a dot on a map that helps us track where they go and what habitat they use, then we can better protect that area.
Another reason that it's important to call in sightings is because researchers aren't able to tag these whales.
The reason we can't tag these animals for the most part is because most whale tags are designed to be put into a dorsal fin, and because these whales don't have a dorsal fin, there's really no good place to put it. The entangled whales a lot of times are tagged, but we're able to attach it to the rope that they're carrying, so it works in that respect.
Aside from calling in whale sightings so that researchers can collect more information on the whales, there's another reason scientists need to know where the whales are.
This is considered the critical habitat area because it is moms and calves.
Temperature drives migration, and the pregnant females come to the southeast U.S. to give birth because our waters here, temperature-wise, mimic what they have in the northeast in the summertime. The calves are born without any blubber, so until they build that blubber layer up, they need to be warm, so that's why they come down here.
So because they're now critically endangered, as Julie said, since the last 10 years they've been on a downward trajectory with their population numbers. So those planes are a combination of efforts from FWC and Georgia DNR, Department of Natural Resources, and Clearwater Aquarium, and others. And it's all flown to find these moms and calves. South of St. Augustine, there's not really any daily flights. And the number one best thing about this program is calling in every single whale sighting to our hotline, 1-888-97-WHALE. That's 888-979-4253.
Calling the hotline for whale sightings starts the process of alerting ships, but it only alerts commercial and military vessels, not the recreational boaters, so it's important to educate yourself.
if we understood what's out there and we want to use this space, as we should use this space. The water and recreation is fun. It's what we should all do. But we need to educate ourselves in the fact that there are whales out there that we could hit and kill. It shares the coastline with us, and we use the coastline so much and more and more and more every year, and we just need to figure out how to coexist with the animals that are out there. We're in their home. We're in their living room. So we should understand that when we're out there with our boats.
I think the 500-yard law is a very good thing to stress because a lot of people don't understand how critically endangered this species is, and they don't understand the laws that are out there to protect them.
Julie stressed that it's illegal to be within 500 yards or 5 football fields of these whales. This applies to the proximity of land, air, and water, as well as interactions between vessels, humans, and technology.
You're just not supposed to be anywhere near them.
This even applies to when the whales are within 500 yards of the coastline, which means people aren't even supposed to be in the water.
The law is there to protect the animals, but it's also there for people. You know, if they get too close and a mother's protective of her calf, we don't want to see anybody getting hurt. I've seen mothers tail slap the water, and if somebody's too close, that could become fatal. Another thing is we're finding a lot of people are posting about sightings on social media.
Julie said this can be dangerous because of the attention being drawn in real time. People are on the lookout for these kinds of posts and go out on their boats and harass the whales because they don't understand the laws that have been put into place.
We ask that if people want to post their experiences about whale sightings on social media, that they wait a day or two and then post it so the whales have time to move.
Additionally, Julie stressed that when it comes to these whale sightings, it's important to inform wildlife officials by calling it in. Besides posting to social media, a new issue has surfaced when it comes to drone usage.
There's a lot of research being done with drones, and we're all on federal permits that allow us to do that, and then we communicate with each other who's doing what so we don't ever have a chance of a collision. What's happened this year, and a question that came up several times on social media, why can't I fly my drone over a whale? Well, it's not necessarily that the drone is going to hurt the whale, okay? You know, could it? Sure, certainly it could, but it's pretty low chance of that. It's also, I mean, there's great things to gain by it. However, if a researcher's drone is out there doing what it's supposed to be doing, and someone else's drone is just out there for pleasure or getting some amazing photos and videos, I know it's happened to me once just this season where this other drone flying illegally raised altitude and almost smashed into my drone. And so you're going to take out 2 drones, you're going to have a collision, take out 2 drones, lose all that data, and it's so important that we get this data. And it's the laws are there for a reason, and we just would hope people would respect the law and follow it. And if you don't understand a law, educate yourself on why it exists, because they are there for good reason.
Joel stressed the importance of education on the human impact affecting the North Atlantic right whales.
We have so many boaters in Florida. We have a lot of new people moving to Florida. We're Florida focused because that's where we are, and that's where these calving grounds are. And I've educated myself. I'm a boater, surfer, paddleboarder, kayaker, all that, drone pilot, and I understand all of it. And it doesn't, it's a lot of reading maybe, but it's very interesting, and it actually adds to the experience, and it makes you respect them more. There is also something everyone can look into, is there is a bill in Congress.
The bill in Congress is called the Right Whale Coexistence Act. The legislation will fund collaborative research between private and public sectors to reduce human impact and recover the species. Even with international protection, the whales are still faced with human impact, leading to the decline of their population.
Fishing gear entanglement is the number one cause of death for these animals right now. It used to be ship strikes, and ship strikes are a close second. As we know, 3 calves and 1 mom killed just in the past 2 years by boats. The biggest boat was 54 feet. The other 2 boats were probably smaller recreational boats. Typically, it is lobster and crab traps, but there's other ground fish that are caught with this fishing gear. It's a trap that sits on the bottom of the ocean floor with a rope that goes all the way through the water column and a buoy at the surface. That's so you can see where your trap is, so you can grab it later. You may have a trawl, which is several traps tied together, and then each end will have a line that goes through the water column to a buoy, And what's happening with these whales, they dive down through the water column. When they know their food is nearby, they eat a little tiny zooplankton, copepod, Calanus finmarchicus. It looks like a little tiny shrimp. They're smaller than a grain of rice, or about the size of a piece of rice. And they eat 2,000 to 3,000 pounds of this a day. And they open their mouth wide and go through the water column and grab their food. The lobster and the crab is happening right where their feeding grounds are. They dive down, open their mouth, scoop up a bunch of food. The line goes into their mouth and gets stuck into their baleen typically. They try to get this rope line off of them, so they spin, which unfortunately wraps it around their pectoral flippers, and it can wrap it around their tail. They're moving and flexing their body, and it just tightens around them and hurts them.
Cottontail was an 11-year-old North Atlantic right whale male found at the end of 2020 by the Center for Coastal Studies. He was seen in the Northeast heavily entangled in fishing gear.
He swam all over the Atlantic Ocean entangled. He could not feed. He slowly but surely lost his blubber. Slowly but surely probably got very cold.
Cottontail was in extremely bad shape when he was seen again in February of 2021.
Julie and I went out on the boat to try and help and get a telemetry buoy on so we could track the whale so that they could attempt to get more of the gear off of this whale. But by that time we had saw him, he was in extremely bad shape, and this whale looked nothing like any other whale I had seen. The breathing, the sound was just this awful, like, suffering sound, and it looked like he was just trying to break the surface right where his blowholes are just to lift this gear up and not dig into his body anymore.
Within a week of Joel and Julie seeing Cottontail, he died, and videos surfaced all over of the whale being eaten by sharks.
And everybody was excited to see that video, but it is not natural in any way. That whale died from an entanglement. And yes, sharks can eat whales for sure naturally, but not if the whale dies from an entanglement. And that's suffering. You almost would rather get hit by a boat. You die much quicker.
It typically takes 6 months for an entangled whale to die, because they usually either get an infection or they starve to death. Boat strikes a lot of times are immediate. They could suffer blunt force trauma and or sharp force trauma, either getting smacked by the bow of a ship and it just kills them immediately, or the propeller cuts could sever arteries, they could bleed out really fast, it could puncture a lung and they can't breathe anymore. So yeah, usually a ship strike is very, very quick.
Or within a few minutes compared to an entanglement, which is like, it's horrific. The North Atlantic right whale is hard to talk about because there's so much sad. That's why Dereicha and snow cone are so amazing, because it's so hard to talk about this species without it being sad, because it really is a sad story that this is happening.
MRC's Volunteer Sighting Network saw snow cone 2 years ago when she gave birth to her first calf. It was one of those unusual situations where she took her calf all the way to the Gulf of Mexico during the season, which is rare.
Snowcone and her calf got a lot of close approaches by boaters on the Gulf side and finally started to go back around the Keys, heading north to the feeding grounds. It wasn't until the whales made it back to familiar territory when tragedy struck.
Her calf was struck at 6 months of age by 2 different vessels weeks apart and was found floating dead off the coast of New Jersey in the summer of 2020.
Snowcone continued through the feeding season, and in March of 2021 she was found with a potentially lethal entanglement. Rope was embedded in the top of her head, and researchers took about 300 feet of rope off to reduce the amount of weight she was carrying.
They got her into a monitoring mode where they said, we think the rope is short enough that maybe drag will help pull it out. And so they just watched her from that point on.
In December of 2021, Snowcone was seen back in the southeast coast where she gave birth to a calf while still entangled in rope.
It was the first time a North Atlantic right whale had ever been documented as having gone through a pregnancy and giving birth to a healthy calf while entangled. She's been a trooper, for losing her calf 2 years ago and giving birth while entangled. And the fact that she came back and did it in only 2 years is also amazing, whether you're entangled or not. A lot of these animals are taking 10 to 13 years now between the birth of one calf to the next calf. if we can quit killing these animals accidentally, they can reproduce on their own. I think they're showing that. And it's just a matter of keeping them alive long enough to get to reproductive age and actually contribute to the population before they die.
The other mom is Dereicha.
Derecha was seen here 2 years ago with her fourth calf. The calf had been hit in the head by a boat and wounded her in a way that she had no chance of surviving.
At 1 week old, just imagine that. This whale, they have a gestation period of 12 to 13 months. You give birth to the calf. The calf would have been nursing, but this calf was killed slowly because the calf starved to death because it could not nurse from mom.
Aerial surveys found the calf, and researchers went out to do everything possible to save it, including antibiotic injections to help.
You can't not feed a 1 week old animal. It just doesn't work. So that calf was not seen again, and that's just horrific. So I was wondering what happens to mom, what goes through her head. Would she bother trying to reproduce again? Is there a period of time that she has to go through for mourning? The great news, the amazing news, another amazing resiliency story of these animals. Mom Dereicha is back here right now with a brand new calf. Both these moms, Snowcone and Dereicha, their stories are amazing, and it gives me even more respect and more fire to just really try to help these animals.
And Dereicha's back after only 2 years as well, instead of 10 or more.
We can solve the problem if we just if we act quick enough, educate ourselves quick enough. For sure, like Julie said, they can recover
And work together.
And work together, yeah. What was the name of that act again?
The Right Whale Coexistence.
Coexistence. What a good word.